tonight on First at 9 this Monday the 22nd of December 2025. Global plea. International economists urge delaying Sri Lanka's debt repayments to better cope with the aftermath of cyclone Ditwa. Local economists, however, call on the government to continue the current program. Neighbourly visit. Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar arrives in Sri Lanka. Resettlement. Government to build apartment complexes on selected lands to resettle victims of cyclone Ditwa. Law and order. Police constable allegedly assaulted by NPP MP Shanta Padmakumara granted bail following arrest.
Kalin baby so rupiyal 90කට. Kalin baby podi හැමෝටමයි.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, you're joining First at 9, brought to you by Sri Lanka's most trusted news source, Derana News Channel. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. We begin with your top story this evening. Top international economists are calling for an immediate halt to Sri Lanka's external debt repayments following cyclone Ditwa, warning that continuing payments could push the country back into financial crisis. In a joint statement, economists point out that even under the current IMF-supported program, Sri Lanka remains under severe debt pressure. However, economist Professor Priyanka Dunusinghe claims that the government's best course of action is to continue the current debt repayment program. Issuing a statement, 121 global economists state that although creditors have agreed to reduce Sri Lanka's debt repayments by 17% in net present value terms under the International Monetary Fund's debt relief program, the relief is insufficient in the face of a major climate disaster. The document is signed by Nobel laureate Professor Joseph Stiglitz, Indian development economist Jayati Ghosh, the inequality expert Thomas Piketty, former Argentinian economy minister Martin Guzman, and the author of Donut Economics Kate Rawat. According to the experts, despite the debt relief, the Sri Lankan government's external debt repayments still amount to around 25% of total government revenue, placing the country among those with the highest debt servicing burdens in the world. According to IMF staff assessments, even after debt relief, Sri Lanka faces a 50% probability of defaulting again or requiring another debt restructuring under the IMF's own debt sustainability models. The IMF has also publicly warned that debt risks will remain high for many years. The economists highlight that cyclone Ditwa has further weakened Sri Lanka's economic outlook, increasing the need for emergency spending on relief, reconstruction, healthcare and restoring critical infrastructure. They warn that prioritizing debt repayments at this stage would divert scarce public funds away from urgent humanitarian needs. They also stress that climate-related shocks must be treated as a core factor in debt sustainability assessments, especially for highly vulnerable countries such as Sri Lanka. The statement urges bilateral lenders, private creditors and international financial institutions to grant immediate payment suspension. However, Sri Lankan economist Professor Priyanka Dunusinghe expresses a contrary assessment and urges Sri Lanka to continue the current debt repayment program.
Under
the debt restructuring program, we have reached agreements that allow for lower loan repayments until 2043. However, if this process is delayed further, the country will face a significantly higher debt burden. Interest on these loans will continue to accumulate, resulting in even heavier debt load in the future, one that Sri Lanka may not be able to withstand. Attempting to manage the economy at a global level in this manner is akin to a child playing with fire. This group of economists subscribes to modern monetary theory, and many countries, including Sri Lanka, have faced crises after following such advice. The most prudent course of action for the government is to continue on the current path.
The 30% discount on Arpico Farm and Spring mattresses, available at Arpico Supercenter and Arpico Daily.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar arrived in Sri Lanka earlier this evening for an official visit. The visit comes in the context of India's Operation Sagar Bandhu, launched to address the devastation caused by cyclone Ditwa. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar arrived in Sri Lanka for an official visit. According to the Indian External Affairs Ministry, Minister Jaishankar is visiting Sri Lanka as the special envoy of the Indian Prime Minister and will meet Sri Lanka's leadership. The ministry noted that the visit underscores India's neighbourhood first policy and comes in the context of Operation Sagar Bandhu, launched to address the devastation caused by cyclone Ditwa. Meanwhile, Chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress of China, Zhao Liji, is scheduled to visit Sri Lanka for a 2-day trip. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that he will be accompanied by a delegation from China to observe the ongoing relief efforts in Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has recalled dozens of ambassadors, including US Ambassador to Sri Lanka Julie Chung, as part of an America First diplomatic reshuffle. US ambassadors to 29 countries will return to Washington for reassignment rather than lose their posts entirely. Minister of Housing Dr. Susil Ranasinghe states that lands will be identified for the construction of apartment complexes to resettle people whose homes were destroyed by the disaster. Meanwhile, railway services between Lanka and Anuradhapura on the Northern Railway line, which was severely disrupted by the disaster, resumed today.
The sluice gates of several major reservoirs, including Rajanganaya, Huruluvav and Kotmale, remain open as the northeast monsoon continues to bring heavy rainfall to many areas. With the opening of the sluice gates of the Meemure reservoir, some people were seen fishing in the flowing water. 20 families have been temporarily relocated to the Desan Delta Tamil College after several houses in the Pupurasa Desan estate, located within the Doluwa division of Kandy, collapsed and sank. According to the other Derana correspondent, the main road leading to the estate has also been submerged. Residents from landslide-affected villages in 8 Grama-Niladhari divisions, including Udagama, Ihalagama and Dunukawla in Gampola, staged a protest today near the Gampola Divisional Secretariat. They allege that no solutions have been provided to families affected by the landslides in these areas. The Institute of Social Development convened a press briefing in Colombo today regarding the rights of the Malayalam community in disaster-affected plantations.
We don't need temporary solutions anymore. Give the people of the estate community the permanent ownership of a plot of land and a house.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Housing disclosed plans to resettle families whose houses were damaged by the disaster.
Over 6,000 houses have been completely destroyed and more than 100,000 houses have suffered partial damage. Some areas remain uninhabitable even if houses were not fully damaged. We must take action to resettle these people as well. Alternative lands have been identified through district secretaries and we plan to construct apartment complexes in most of these locations.
Meanwhile, during a conference at the Hector Kobak Kadua Agricultural Research Institute, Deputy Minister Namal Karuna Ratna addressed crop damage compensation programs.
Some may be hoping for a food shortage, but we want to assure them that such fears will not be realized. There is no possibility of a rice shortage.
Train services on the Northern Railway line between Kankasanthurai and Anuradhapura, severely damaged by the disaster, resumed today. Work on the section between Gallaella and Manampitiya in Polonnaruwa has been completed and a test journey is scheduled for the coming days. Reconstruction of the Polonnaruwa-Batiklo railway line has also reached the final stage. Additionally, the railway department has commenced work on the Kandy-Matale line, which sustained damage at 71 points over its 28-kilometer span due to the disaster.
30% discount on Apico Farm and Spring mattresses, available at Apico Supercenter and Apico Daily.
Musa Phoenix Natal Fiesta November 13 සිට 16 දක්වා අනුරාධපුර ස්පොට්නික් ක්‍රීඩා පිටියේදී
වසරකට ළමුන් 22000කගේ පාසල් ගමන මග නවතිනවා.
එවන් දරුවන් නැවත පාසල් යවන්න අභ්‍යාස පොත් පරිත්‍යාග කරන්න. සෑම පොතකටම ඇට්ලස් පොතක් අපෙන්.
The World Bank estimates that cyclone Ditwa, which hit Sri Lanka in late November, has caused $4.1 billion in direct damages to buildings, agriculture and critical infrastructure, equivalent to about 4% of the country's GDP. The cyclone affected nearly 2 million people and 500,000 families across all 25 districts, disrupting livelihoods, essential services and the broader economy. The central province, particularly the Kandy district, suffered the most, with damages of $689 million from flooding and landslides. Agricultural losses are estimated at $814 million, including paddy, vegetables, maize, livestock and fisheries, threatening food security and rural livelihoods. Non-residential buildings, including schools, health facilities, businesses and factories, incurred $562 million in damage, disrupting education, healthcare and local economies. In response, the World Bank Group has mobilized up to $120 million from ongoing projects to restore essential services and infrastructure, including healthcare, water, education, agriculture and connectivity in the hardest hit areas. The Ministry of Finance has issued a news circular detailing relief proposed for those affected by landslides and floods caused by cyclone Ditwa. The circular includes new additions, clarifications and amendments to make the disaster relief program more efficient and effective as proposed in the Budget Circular number 8 of 2025. Accordingly, the maximum allowance paid on the assessed value of houses damaged by the cyclone has been set at 2.5 million rupees. Derana launched relief operations today to provide aid to the disaster-affected people of Meemure. Meemure, a tourist destination located near the border between Kandy and Matale districts in the Knuckles mountain range, was severely affected by cyclone Ditwa. The residents of Meemure are currently facing difficulties due to the loss of electricity and telecommunication services. The Derana team is currently en route to Meemure but is facing obstacles as the path to the village was destroyed by the disaster. Derana plans to continue the relief operation until the area returns to normalcy. Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya calls for the swift implementation of the government's national level plans for education, emphasizing that Sri Lanka needs to rapidly advance the education sector, which remained stagnant in the past. The Premier made these remarks during a recent event in Kilinochchi.
The President's Fund launched an initiative to recognize 3,000 district-level top performers at the 2023 and 2024 GCE Advanced Level examinations. As the final leg of the initiative, the Northern Province program was held yesterday at Nelumpiasa Hall, Kilinochchi, under the patronage of Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya. During the event, 274 students from Vaunia, Mana, Mulativ, Kilinochchi and Jaffna received certificates and 100,000 rupee grant each.
4.8 billion rupees have been allocated through the President's Fund for the development of the education sector. Out of this allocation, 3.4 billion rupees have been set aside for the Mahapolis Scholarship Scheme. In addition, 6.1 billion rupees have been allocated for various services, including medical assistance. If preschool students have been affected by the disaster, necessary allocations will be made through the President's Fund. The President's Fund is a people's fund.
Chairpersons of district coordination committees and officials are present here today. I call on them to pay special attention to the education sector. We have proposed national plans and will provide funds. Therefore, these initiatives must be implemented swiftly as we need to accomplish goals that have not been achieved over the past few decades. We hope these talented students will enter universities and return to the north after completing their degrees as teachers, engineers, doctors, artists, sociologists and public officials. We congratulate and appreciate you with that expectation. We value all of you. Your success is shared by the wider community. You are not only vested with the responsibility of your personal progress, but also the collective progress of the community. We will provide our fullest support to make you leaders of this country.
Welcome back to First at 9. Samagi Janabalawege MP Dr. Harsh De Silva calls on the President to immediately appoint an Auditor General, a top executive position in Sri Lanka's bureaucracy that still remains vacant. He made these remarks during a media briefing today.
We presented a letter to the President signed by me in my capacity as Chairman of the Committee on Public Finance. The Committee on Public Finance oversees matters under the Auditor General's purview. An acting Auditor General was appointed whose tenure ended on the 6th of December. Since then, there has been no Auditor General. Today is the 22nd and I reminded the President to appoint the country's Auditor General. The Constitutional Council rejected all previous nominations. Therefore, a suitable candidate must be nominated. A suitable candidate must be appointed appointed or qualified and experienced person must be chosen. The Rebuilding Sri Lanka Fund has not been officially passed in Parliament statutorily. It must be done so immediately. Even if these were usual circumstances, we would still be in violation of the Constitution. However, if these were usual circumstances, we could have asked for the payment to be made after the holidays. But these are exceptional circumstances. Who will perform these administrative functions? Who will audit government institutions?
The police constable apprehended in connection with the alleged assault involving Ratnapura District National People's Power MP Shanta Padmakumara was granted bail. The constable was earlier arrested by the Ambilipitiya Divisional Crime Investigation Bureau on multiple charges including criminal intimidation.
A police constable attached to Suryakanda Police admitted himself to the Ambilipitiya General Hospital on Saturday night, alleging that Ratnapura District National People's Power MP Shanta Padmakumara had assaulted him. The constable is reported to have been involved in a raid on a cannabis cultivation on a plot of land owned by the MP's father-in-law. However, addressing a media briefing yesterday, the NPP parliamentarian refuted the allegations, asserting instead that it was the police constable who attempted to assault him. Meanwhile, the police media division issued a statement providing further details on the incident. According to the statement, a medical officer had observed the presence of an odor of alcohol on the constable's breath. Although no narcotic substances were detected in the constable's urine samples, authorities proceeded to obtain blood samples which were forwarded to the Government Analyst Department to ascertain whether he was under the influence of alcohol at the time of the incident. In this context, the constable was arrested by the Ambilipitiya Divisional Crime Investigation Bureau on multiple charges including criminal intimidation. The constable, who was produced before the Ambilipitiya Magistrates Court today, was later released on bail. The case is scheduled to be recalled on the 26th of January next year. The Police Media Division convened a special press briefing today to address the situation.
The complaint lodged by Police Constable Susanta Hettiarachchi alleges that his motorcycle was seized by the group. The medical report concerning the altercation between the parties has been reviewed and it clearly indicates that no injuries resulted from a physical assault. During the ongoing investigation, officers recovered the constable's motorcycle from the location of the alleged incident. This has raised questions about the accuracy of the constable's claims and whether false information may have been provided. Further inquiries are underway to determine whether the complaint stems from a personal matter or if the constable was acting under pressure from an external group. As law enforcement officials, we strongly condemn any attempt to address an official matter through personal or improper means should it be found that the constable acted in such a manner. According to the complaint filed by the NPP MP, the constable faces allegations of criminal intimidation, assault and coercion. Statements from multiple witnesses have confirmed that aspects of the reported incident did occur. We wish to assure the public that investigations will be conducted impartially. No party will receive preferential treatment and it is expected that these matters will ultimately be resolved in accordance with the law.
Several public representatives commented on the development.
The constable involved in the incident has now been taken into custody. During the period he was hospitalized following the dispute, no statements were recorded from the other parties involved. Hospital staff were reportedly pressured to discharge him and medical personnel received threatening phone calls. What has become of the rule of law in this country? We intend to pursue legal action in the Supreme Court in response to the injustice suffered by the police constable. It is evident that the system has undergone a significant change. Recently, an NPP MP was involved in an accident, yet authorities failed to promptly verify whether he was under the influence of alcohol. The breathalyzer test was conducted 18 hours after the incident. Following this, the OIC and several police officers were transferred. In the current case, authorities were performing their duty during a raid on a cannabis cultivation when the MP allegedly assaulted a police officer while another officer faced transfer. The IGP should be ashamed of acting in a manner that appears to favour the government. In the cases involving Sanjeev Edirisinghe, Ashoka Ranwala and Shanta Kumara, legal action has been directed at law enforcement officials rather than the alleged wrongdoers. The situation reflects not the independence of the police but the control exercised over them by the government. Unfortunately, this is the reality. The individual accused of cultivating cannabis remains at large while the officer who apprehended the culprits has been taken into custody. This clearly indicates that the government has moved to alter the law in a manner that serves its own interests. An unidentified assailant opened fire at an employee of a home appliances showroom in Ambalangada this morning, who succumbed to his injuries on the spot. Investigations have revealed that the deceased had contested the Ambalangada Urban Council under the Samagijana Balavegaya and was also linked to several criminal factions. A shooting was reported inside a shop in Ambalangada at around 8:30 am this morning. The incident was captured on a nearby CCTV camera. Footage shows a gunman attempting to shoot a person inside the showroom. However, the firearm initially misfires. The suspect is then seen fleeing the scene with the intended target chasing after him. The assailant subsequently returns with a revolver and opens fire. According to police, the gunman fled the scene following the shooting and the victim succumbed to his injuries on the spot. The motorcycle used by the assailants was later found abandoned in the Andagala area after being ridden through a by-road. The deceased, a resident of Ambalangada, had contested under Samagijana Balavegaya for the Ambalangada Urban Council in this year's local government elections. Investigations have revealed that he is linked to two murders reported in 2014 and 2015. Police further stated that he had previously been apprehended by the Police Narcotics Bureau in possession of live ammunition. Investigators also disclosed that the deceased had been arrested earlier for aiding and abetting the murder of organised criminal Samayan, who was shot dead in Kalutara while being transported in a prison bus. It is reported that the deceased had sheltered and treated the injured assailants involved in that killing. Police noted that the victim's mobile phone was missing following the shooting. Subsequent investigations discovered the device in the possession of a member of the victim's family who had attempted to conceal it from authorities. An examination of the mobile phone's data revealed that last night the deceased had contacted known criminal figure Lokupati, who is currently detained at the Busa High Security Prison. Investigators further state that the deceased had maintained links with underworld figures including Karandeni Sudha, a known rival of Lokupati, as well as Koskoda Suji and his rival Urugaha Indika. Police also revealed that the deceased had been involved in handling financial matters for underworld operations. Due to the deceased maintaining links with multiple criminal factions, police state that it is currently difficult to determine who orchestrated the killing. Further investigations are ongoing. Meanwhile, Senior Deputy Inspector General in charge of the Southern Province, Kit Srijayalat, stated that high-profile criminals detained at the Busa High Security Prison continue to communicate freely via mobile phones and orchestrate violent crimes. The SDIG notes that relevant authorities have been informed of this ongoing threat, but failure to effectively address the issue has resulted in incidents of this nature. With the latest incident, the total number of shootings reported so far this year has risen to 111, with 59 fatalities and 55 people injured. The Sri Lanka Medical Association today disclosed that adherence to pharmacopoeia standards is not a significant factor when registering drugs in the country, and that the issue is currently being politicized. Meanwhile, several parties called on the government to initiate a special investigation through a technical committee into the pharmacopoeia standards and the ondansetron drug controversy.
The National Medicines Regulatory Authority took measures to withdraw 4 batches of the ondansetron vaccine from use in hospitals across the country. This decision followed complaints regarding bacterial contamination and adverse reactions linked to the vaccine. Today, the Citizens Movement Against Fraud, Corruption and Waste submitted a written request to the Medical Supply Unit of the Ministry of Health seeking information regarding the incident and the 10 imported drugs that have since been withdrawn. Several political and professional figures, including opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, voiced their concerns regarding the matter.
What is the government's stance on the opinions expressed by its medical officers? There is public concern that this vaccine may have contributed to the death of 2 individuals. We urge the government to conduct a thorough and impartial investigation into the matter.
එයට විරුද්ධව කරුණා කරන කටයුතු කරන්න.
රාජ්‍ය අවුල් සංස්ථාවේ වර්තමාන සභාපතිවරයා කියනවා
The current SPC chairman has stated that such incidents are not the responsibility of politicians. However, the regulation, supply and distribution of quality medicines falls squarely within the duties of the health minister, who cannot evade these responsibilities. We urge the government to review matters related to the Indian pharmacopoeia through a technical committee. Following this, it's imperative that the country withdraw from the agreement.
ගිවිසුම ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන එක වහා අත්හිටුවීමට කටයුතු කළ යුතුයි.
ඉන්දියානු ඖෂධ ප්‍රමිතිය ලංකාව තුල පිළිගැනීමට ලක් කරන්න.
On April 5th this year, Sri Lanka and India signed a bilateral agreement allowing the country to recognize the quality of medicines manufactured in India. Under this deal, Indian medicines are accorded the same status as those from the UK, US and Europe. Given that lives have been lost due to substandard Indian medicines, it is deeply concerning that such an agreement has been signed.
පිළිගැනීමක් ලබා දීම මාරාන්තික කාරණයක් බව අපි සඳහන් කළ යුතුයි.
Meanwhile, the Sri Lanka Medical Association has issued a formal response to these allegations.
Ondansetron කියන ඖෂධය
The Indian company Man Pharmaceuticals, which manufactures the ondansetron vaccine, has been supplying medications to Sri Lanka for several years. However, the Indian pharmacopoeia is not related to this matter. The administration of the drug is independent of its approval under the Indian pharmacopoeia. This is a minor issue being used for politically motivated purposes.
කතාවකින් අහුලගත්ත එක වචනයක් පාවිච්චි කරනවා. නෑ, ඒ ගිවිසුම් කිසිසේත්ම අදාළ නැහැ ඖෂධ සම්බන්ධව.
Welcome back to First at 9. Sri Lanka's national inflation decreased to 2.4% in November 2025 compared to 2.7% in October. According to the latest data released by the Department of Census and Statistics, year-on-year food inflation decreased to 3.6% in November compared to 4.1% in October. Year-on-year inflation of non-food commodities, meanwhile, remained unchanged at 1.5%. Contribution to the inflation rate from the food group was 1.6%, while the non-food group contributed 0.8%. The NCPI for all items for November is 207.2, a decrease of 0.3 index points compared to October. Chairman of the Export Development Board, Mangala Vijay Singh, says Sri Lanka's export earnings have reached $15.776 billion so far in 2025, achieving 87% of the annual target of $18 billion. Export revenue in November was recorded at $1.364 billion, reflecting a 5.8% year-on-year growth.
Sri Lanka's export performance rose to $1.364 billion in November 2025. Revenue from merchandise exports during the month stood at $1.053 billion, while services exports contributed $311 million. Overall export performance in November reflects a 5.8% increase compared to the same period last year. Cumulative export earnings from January to November 2025 reached $15.776 billion. Merchandise exports accounted for $12.417 billion, while services exports amounted to $3.358 billion. These figures reflects a 5.8 to 6% year-on-year increase. Sri Lanka's export revenue target for 2025 was set at $18 billion, of which 87% has been achieved so far. During the past 11 months, the apparel sector generated $4.829 billion in export revenue. A notable increase was also recorded in IT services exports, which generated $1.442 billion. Exports to the United States during the same period amounted to $2.734 billion. India, which ranked as the third largest export destination last year, has emerged as the second highest export destination in 2025. Significant growth was also recorded in exports to the United Kingdom, Italy, France, the Netherlands, and United Arab Emirates and Switzerland. Trade agreements remain a key challenge for the export sector, highlighting the urgent need of securing new trade deals. A specialized committee has been appointed for this purpose, with its progress scheduled for review in February 2026. Sri Lanka's export revenue target for 2030 has been set at $36 billion. Export earnings for 2025 are projected to reach between $17.2 and $17.4 billion, which would make a historic milestone as the first time export revenue surpasses $17 billion. Authorities note that existing export infrastructure is insufficient to meet future targets, underscoring and the need to expand the exporter base. Several industries have been identified under the National Export Development Plan with the focus on increasing the participation of small and medium entrepreneurs. The goal is to raise the contribution of small and medium entrepreneurs to 25% of total exports by 2020. A series of initiatives are currently being implemented to promote SME products globally, with plans to introduce 3,000 new entrepreneurs next year through a new export development program. Meanwhile, the impact of Cyclone Ditwa on exporters is being assessed by the Ministry of Industry and Entrepreneurship. Initial government compensation will be granted, with further financial assistance to be considered if required.
The Colombo Bourse closed in negative territory today as a result of price losses in counters such as Colombo Dockyard, Hatton National Bank and Richard Pearce and Company. The benchmark ASBI lost 1.13% to close at 21,898.20, while the more liquid S&P Sri Lanka 20 decreased by 0.7% to end the day at 6,014.36. Market turnover was 2.97 billion rupees. Meanwhile, the Colombo Stock Exchange announced a change in the S&P Sri Lanka 20 index constituents made by S&P Dow Jones indices at the 2025 year-end rebalance effective from today. Accordingly, Ceylon Cold Stores, Chevron Lubricants Sri Lanka, Commercial Bank of Ceylon PLC non-voting, LOLC Finance and Royal Ceramics have been excluded from the S&P Sri Lanka 20 index constituents, while Axis Engineering, People's Leasing and Finance, Singer Sri Lanka and Sunshine Holdings have been newly introduced. Up next is Dinuka Dharmasena from Capital Alliance with a few thoughts to round off our Markets in Weave segment for the week.
The Sri Lankan stock market experienced a downward trend past week, with the SPI declining approximately 1.6 times to close at 22,149 rupees. Similarly, S&P SL20 index dipped by 0.7% to settling at 6,056 rupees. Market activity also saw a significant reduction as the total weekly turnover fell roughly by 34% to 14.2 billion rupees compared to the 21.5 billion rupees recorded in the previous week. Meanwhile, the last week Treasury bill auction raised 40.6 billion rupees, with yields across 3, 6 and 12 months maturities remaining unchanged.
That's all for tonight from First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.